Now get furious.
Beginning with Operation Epic Fury.
Israeli forces carrying out a fresh wave of strikes this morning in Beirut as they reveal a top Iranian official was killed overnight.
Yep. Chief foreign correspondent Trey Yingst knows the magnitude of this killing. He joins us live from Tel Aviv with the latest. Trey, this is big news.
Breaking news, Ali Larijani is dead. Israel's defense minister has confirmed overnight that one of the most powerful figures in the Iranian regime, the man widely considered the de facto leader of Iran after the killing of the supreme leader, was eliminated in a precision airstrike. This is not a mid-level official. This is not a regional commander or a proxy leader. Ali Larijani was serving as secretary to Iran's Supreme National Security Council, the body that sits at the apex of Iranian military and strategic decision-making. He was considered the last major well-known hardliner still standing in the Iranian power structure, the man who was in practical terms holding what remained of the regime together. He was killed overnight in a strike that Israeli officials describe as part of a joint U.S. and Israeli intelligence operation targeting the highest levels of the Iranian command structure. And the strike that killed Larijani was not the only one. In a separate operation overnight, Israeli forces also killed a top IRGC commander responsible for commanding the crackdown on protesters inside Iran earlier this year. Over a dozen officials were with him when the strike took place. Meanwhile, the U.S. embassy in Baghdad was targeted by drones and rockets, one drone slamming into an area just outside the compound walls. Hezbollah continued launching rockets in northern Israel. Southern Beirut is under fresh Israeli airstrikes this morning. And the question that is now reverberating through every intelligence agency and foreign ministry on earth is the same one that nobody can fully answer yet. Who is in charge of Iran? I'm Hannah Blake. This is Global News Diary. Let's get into it. To understand why the killing of Ali Larijani is being described as the most significant strike of the past week and a half, possibly the most significant targeted killing of this entire conflict, you need to understand who he was and what role he was playing inside the fractured, decapitated Iranian power structure. Larijani was not a military commander in the conventional sense. He was something more dangerous and more difficult to replace, a political military power broker with deep institutional credibility across every faction of the Iranian regime. He had served in multiple senior roles over decades: Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, Chief Nuclear Negotiator, National Security Advisor. He understood the regime's military apparatus, its intelligence networks, its negotiating positions, and its internal fault lines better than almost anyone alive. When Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei was killed in the opening strikes of Operation Epic Fury, and when questions immediately emerged about the condition of the newly appointed supreme leader Mojtaba Khamenei, who has not appeared on camera since and whose physical condition remains unconfirmed, Larijani stepped, at least informally, into the vacuum. He was the experienced, authoritative figure around whom what remained of the regime's decision-making could cohere. He was considered the last major well-known hardliner still standing in the regime's upper echelons, and he was visibly confident, perhaps overconfident. Just days before his death, Larijani was giving live television interviews in the streets of Tehran, almost taunting American and Israeli forces by demonstrating that he could walk freely through the Iranian capital. A senior official of a regime at war, moving publicly through a city under bombardment, signaling that he was untouchable. Days later, a precision strike found him. Israeli officials confirmed that the intelligence leading up to this strike was part of a joint U.S.-Israeli effort, the same tightly coordinated intelligence sharing architecture that has driven the systematic elimination of Iranian leadership throughout this campaign. The message delivered by Larijani's death is unambiguous. No one is untouchable. Not the supreme leader, not the de facto leader, not the man giving television interviews in the streets of Tehran 4 days ago. The killing of Larijani brings the central strategic question of this conflict into the sharpest possible focus. Who is actually in charge of Iran right now? The answer, based on everything available from intelligence reports, battlefield behavior, and the on-the-record assessments of senior military and political analysts, is deeply unsettling in its implications. Nobody knows for certain. The supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, has not appeared publicly since Operation Epic Fury began. He has not given a speech. He has not released an audio statement. He has not appeared on video. The only communication attributed to him is a written note read by a state television presenter, unverifiable, unconfirmed, and entirely consistent with a scenario in which he is either severely incapacitated or dead. President Trump himself questioned publicly whether the supreme leader is alive. Larijani, the man who had been functioning as the de facto center of gravity for whatever remained of the Iranian leadership, is now dead. Iran's foreign minister has been communicating through statements and public appearances, but the foreign minister is a political figure. He operates on the diplomatic track. He does not command IRGC units in the field. And the disconnect between what the foreign minister says, we have told our forces not to fire on Gulf states that are offering mediation, and what actually happens, Iranian forces firing on those same Gulf states minutes later, reveals the depth of the command and control breakdown inside the Iranian military. The Iranian regime has been preparing for exactly this scenario. Its military doctrine incorporates something called mosaic defense, a distributed, decentralized approach designed to allow individual units and commanders to continue operating even after the top of the command structure has been eliminated. The theory is that even if the apex is decapitated, the network continues to function. But the theory and the practice are diverging in real time. The people filling the shoes of the eliminated commanders are less experienced. They don't understand the command structure as well. The coordination between units already fragile is breaking down further. And the most telling evidence of that breakdown is the inability of whoever is nominally in charge to prevent Iranian forces from firing on countries that are attempting to mediate on Iran's behalf. That is not the behavior of a military under coherent central command. That is the behavior of a military operating on instinct, executing actions that its nominal leadership cannot stop, even when it wants to. Against the backdrop of Larijani's death and the accelerating collapse of Iranian command and control, a remarkable development emerged, one that may signal the beginning of the end of this conflict. Senior U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff revealed that he received a text message from Iran's foreign minister. The message was brief but extraordinary in its implications. Let's talk. Witkoff noted that this had never happened before. An Iranian foreign minister reaching out directly to a senior American official through a personal channel in the middle of an active war, asking to open a dialogue that is not standard Iranian diplomatic behavior. It is a signal, and it is a signal that is being read very carefully in Washington. The timing is significant. The text came as the campaign against the Iranian regime was reaching new levels of intensity, as Larijani was being identified and eliminated, as IRGC commanders were being taken out in targeted strikes, as the defense industrial base was being systematically destroyed, as the Strait of Hormuz operation was demonstrating that Iran's most powerful economic weapon was being neutralized. Iran's foreign minister texting Steve Witkoff to say, let's talk, is the sound of a regime beginning to calculate that continuing to fight costs more than finding a way out. Whether that calculation translates into a genuine willingness to accept the terms the United States and Israel have been pursuing, verified elimination of nuclear capabilities, unfettered inspection access, surrender of enriched uranium stockpiles, remains to be seen. Iran has a long history of using negotiations as a delay tactic, as a way to buy time to rebuild what has been destroyed and regroup what has been degraded. But the conditions of this particular negotiation request are different from every previous one. The regime making this request has lost its supreme leader, its de facto leader, its navy, its air force, its missile manufacturing capacity, and its ability to coordinate military operations across its own forces. The leverage it brought to previous negotiations does not exist in the same form anymore. And President Trump, responding to a question about wrapping up the war, was direct. It will be soon. Not this week, but soon. And the world will be much safer when it is done. One of the most revealing details to emerge from the current phase of this conflict is what the Iranian regime is doing to keep its own population from learning the truth about what is happening. The regime is going door to door, searching for Iranians who possess Starlink satellite internet terminals. Starlink provides high-speed internet access independent of ground-based telecommunications infrastructure. It cannot be blocked by a government that controls its domestic internet. Any Iranian with a terminal can access uncensored international news, communicate with people outside Iran, and share information about what is happening inside the country with the outside world. The regime understands the threat, a population that can see in real time the scale of destruction being inflicted on the Iranian military, that can watch footage of the strikes on Tehran, the destruction of Iranian warships, the elimination of IRGC commanders, that can communicate with Iranians in the diaspora. That population is far more likely to conclude that the regime is losing and that the moment for change has arrived. which is why the regime is hunting for the devices, sending security forces door to door to confiscate terminals and cut off the information channels that connect Iranians to the truth about their own situation. The fear driving that effort is real. Earlier this year, the regime killed approximately 32,000 of its own citizens to suppress a popular uprising. Those uprisings happened without Starlink. With Starlink, with Iranians able to coordinate and communicate and see the full picture of a regime in military freefall, the conditions for a mass popular movement become significantly more powerful. President Trump has acknowledged he has many options on the table for supporting the Iranian people, options not publicly displayed but actively considered. The Starlink issue is almost certainly part of that conversation. Even as the primary focus remains on the elimination of Iranian leadership, the conflict continues generating dangerous flashpoints across multiple fronts simultaneously. In Beirut, Israeli forces carried out a fresh wave of airstrikes this morning, targeting Hezbollah's strongholds in the southern neighborhoods of the Lebanese capital. Israeli ground forces are also expanding operations, moving beyond airstrikes to direct engagement in southern Lebanon, calling up reserves, and reinforcing border positions in more than 15 different areas. In Baghdad, the U.S. embassy was targeted overnight by drones and rockets, one slamming into an area just outside the compound walls. No injuries were reported, but the targeting of the American diplomatic mission is a direct escalation by Iranian-backed militias continuing to operate despite the degradation of their sponsor. The pattern of these proxy attacks is increasingly disconnected from any coherent Iranian command. As reporting on Larijani's death confirmed, Iranian leaders have been telling proxy forces not to fire on Gulf states offering mediation, only to watch those forces fire on those same states minutes later. That disconnect is one of the most dangerous aspects of this phase. A military losing coherent central command does not necessarily become less violent. It becomes more unpredictable, firing in patterns that no longer reflect strategic calculation, driven by local commanders operating without clear guidance from above. The United States and Israel are managing that unpredictability through continued aggressive action, maintaining pressure on every front, eliminating leadership at every level, and degrading the capacity for coordinated action faster than the Mosaic defense can reconstitute it. Here is today's question, and after the killing of Larijani, it carries more weight than ever. Ali Larijani, Iran's de facto leader, was killed days after giving live television interviews in the streets of Tehran, apparently believing he was untouchable. Iran's foreign minister has now texted Steve Witkoff asking to talk. Is this the beginning of the end of this conflict? And without Larijani, does Iran have anyone left capable of making the decision to surrender? Drop your answer in the comments below. This community brings the sharpest geopolitical analysis anywhere on this platform. The best responses get featured in the next video. If this breakdown gave you the full picture of one of the most significant developments in this entire conflict, hit that like button right now. 2 seconds. That is all it takes. Subscribe if you are not already here. Every major development in this war, every targeted killing, every diplomatic signal, every strategic shift, covered with the depth and context the story demands. Turn on notifications. After a night like this one, the next development could come at any moment. Share this video. The killing of Larijani is a turning point. Send this to someone who needs to understand why. I'm Hannah Blake. This is Global News Diary. We will be back the moment this story develops further. Stay sharp. Stay informed.